thing that I've noticed is that now we're starting to see perhaps that by Tuesday or Wednesday, beta will begin to pick up speed, and that's a good thing, and then begin to accelerate northeastward across parts of Louisiana and then move northward from there. Until then, we'll be dealing, as Paul said, with a walking pace toward the coast, perhaps making landfall late Monday, early Tuesday as a tropical storm, bringing with it heavy rain and coastal flooding. Those will be the two biggest impacts with the landfall. Jen.
Well, much of the coast of Texas is kind of on high alert this morning as they're starting to see some of the rain from beta come closer to shore. Our Reynolds Wolf is live for us this morning in Rockport, Texas. But Reynolds, talking about rain, we aren't seeing any where you are right now. In fact, I do want to ask, what is around you? It looks like is that a tall ship behind you? What is that?
That is not well, actually, we got a couple of sailboats back there, but in terms of like one of those classic tall ships, like a clipper ship, no, that is certainly not the USS Constitution by any measure, but those are some great ships. I will tell you that when it does come to boats, many of them have been lifted up, put into dry storage, or put inland, especially that was the case in spots like Port O'Connor, but I would not be surprised if we see more of that measure happen as we go over the next several hours and days. We do have the system to contend with, and right now, as it stands on the shoreline, check it out, we've got the tropical storm warnings and watches that are up and down much of the Texas coastline, and we have it into portions of Louisiana too. Now, in terms of the wind speed that we have, the forecast winds, those are going to ramp up. They certainly will as we make our way, especially into the afternoon. But rain is going to be the big issue. Now, the thing to consider when it comes to rain shower activity is if you've any bit of a deviation with the slow moving, and I mean, this thing is crawling. I can paddleboard faster than this storm is moving for the time being. If it moves a little bit farther to the north or moves farther inland, we could see the rain totals change in a very, very big way. But the inverse is true. If this thing stays out to sea, it could be less of an issue. Still, rip currents, regardless, will definitely be a problem. Now, in terms of the flash flood watches, we've got those for you too. And notice we see them, again, not just at the water's edge or along parts of the intercoastal, but they make their way well inland. And this is a story that is not going to stay in Texas entirely, but could move into portions of Louisiana, Mississippi, perhaps even Arkansas. Alabama could be in play, maybe even Tennessee or even Georgia as we round out the end of the week. So a lot to follow here, a storm that is affecting so many people. So say if you're tuning in from Birmingham, Alabama, maybe you're in Little Rock, Arkansas, and you think, hey, this is something that's far away, there's no way it could possibly affect me. I'll tell you, it could affect you. Well, what we have now is quiet times for the people that live here, the 10,000 people that live and right here on the Texas Riviera. They're very familiar with what tropical systems can do. And there's certainly a savviness about them. As we begin, before we send back to Dr. Postel, let's give you a shot here of just how tranquil the water happens to be. But I got to tell you, Dr. Postel, I know major changes in terms of track and intensity could be on the docket today.
Yeah, Reynolds, rain and wind will begin to increase across much of the Texas Gulf Coast today, and it is already impacting the region, including areas in coastal Louisiana. There is the center of Tropical Storm Beta on the latest advisory, a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm. But we're already seeing, as Reynolds was talking about, some rain here removed on the north side of the center and some hundreds of miles away from where the center of circulation is. This is yet one of those storms that's going to bring the impacts, for the most part, at some great distances from where the center of rotation is, and that's something to consider. Winds are very manageable along the Gulf Coast right now, generally gusting 20 to 30 miles per hour at most, and they'll get a little bit stronger, we think, as Tropical Storm Beta closes in on the coast, roughly in a direction about like that. So watch out for some big thunderstorms to accompany the approach and arrival of Tropical Storm Beta. But one good thing is in favor here of not strengthening and will likely limit that potential is the fact that we've got a lot of dry air aloft that is getting circulated into Beta and overall allowing those thunderstorms to remain relatively fractured and unable to support really any intensification beyond where it is right now. We'll see if indeed that's the case, but that is reflected by pretty much all of the guidance that we see. The Hurricane Center's official guidance has it not strengthening any more than where it is right now, in fact weakening probably on final approach. Look at this right now. Relative humidity is less than 5% aloft, let's say about 10 or 15,000 feet up. As I've mentioned before, during a fall day, that's not that big a deal when you're talking about an air mass over, let's say, the upper Midwest. But this is not healthy for tropical cyclones. This kind of air tends to choke them. And that's really one of the reasons why we're really not going to see a whole lot of potential for Beta to strengthen where it is beyond 60 miles per hour. There it goes. Potentially landfall is, let's say, late tomorrow evening or early Tuesday, with at that time dry air likely completely surrounding the circulation, with showers and thunderstorms still in progress in places, bringing some heavy rain, gusty winds, and some coastal flooding with that onshore wind component. But I do think that by midweek, late Tuesday, let's say, or early Wednesday, an upper trough coming in, a dip in the jet stream will begin to accelerate this a bit more than some of the earlier forecasts suggest. So we may not be dealing with this all the way, let's say, through the end of the week, and instead maybe accelerating this thing and moving it along a little bit more quickly by midweek. That would be good news. Here's the intensity forecast, the model wind forecast from a whole bunch of different models. This is right now, and this is when it makes landfall, let's say late Monday or Tuesday. Generally, the guidance is clear that the intensity is either going to remain where it is now or weaken on that final approach. But as Paul, you mentioned all along, it's the impacts with the heavy rain that are going to be very significant going forward.
Yes, definitely concerned with the rain. Also issues at the coast right now. Take a look at what's already happened in Galveston. This was yesterday. Water over the pier here in Galveston Bay. The video shot about an hour before high tide. Voluntary evacuation orders are in place for the Bolivar Peninsula, the breakwater between Galveston Bay and the Gulf of Mexico. At this hour, the Galveston Ferry has suspended service due to high tide conditions. And yeah, water is up and we're approaching low tide just after noon today, then high tide again around 7:30. We've seen also plenty of rain across Texas, and this doesn't even include the rain we had with Hurricane Hannah making a landfall back in July. So just over the last, say, 3 weeks, we've seen quite a bit of rain in areas of Texas, and guess what? We have more. The good news is not seeing as much rain the last 3 weeks across coastal Texas, on towards Houston. Even, well, Lake Charles definitely saw some a couple of, I guess, just past 3 weeks ago with Hurricane Laura there. So that area is still somewhat saturated. But here's the thing, the forecast of that rain to come. Houston rain knocking on your door right now. Same thing in Lake Charles and Cameron, Louisiana. We have a lot more rain to come. Even though there's dry air in the circulation of Beta, it still is a tropical storm. It has tropical moisture. We're going to get some tropical rains out of here. So flash flood watches have been issued across the region. So there's the radar. You can see where that rain is well north of that center, also well east New Orleans. More Beta rain coming your way. And look at Houston. It got that rain coming from east to west down the Bolivar Peninsula. So more rain's coming in. This is the beginning of the rain event. Some models are printing out 10, 20 inches. Some only printing out 3 or 4 inches. Still, that's a lot of rain. And that's going to cause some flooding. So, again, heed the warnings, road closures as well. Don't drive into flooded roadways. So look at the progression of the rain. It continues today. Tomorrow, as that center gets closer, so does a lot more of the heavier rain with the stronger winds. So widespread rain across even North Texas and up towards the Arklatex as we head towards tomorrow, and the concern for flooding. But this system doesn't stop there. Once it makes landfall, potentially late tomorrow night, early Tuesday morning, it starts to move on towards the north and northeast. The good news is it should start moving faster, bringing that rain out of Texas a little quicker as we head towards Wednesday, but it's still raining Wednesday morning potentially in southeastern Texas, but moving into Louisiana and Mississippi and Alabama, even Georgia and Tennessee as we head towards Thursday. So we're going to take this moisture, and it's like Sally, and push it northeastward across the rest of the southeast as we head later into this coming week. Jen?
Well, conditions are going to steadily go downhill along the beaches of Texas today. Surf has already been high, a lot of choppy waves out there. Rip currents, though, are lurking along the shore. Even though it's the final weekend of summer, swimmers should stay out of the water as coastal flooding is also going to be a threat. That'll take us into the middle of the week. Now, the worst of Beta's storm surge anticipated to come in on Monday and Tuesday. We've already talked about the rain, maybe the wind as well. Let's find out what it's going to bring as far as along the beaches, and how's that looking, Greg?
Yeah, I think, Jen, we're going to see some gusty winds and some coastal flooding with some heavy rain. And that will be, I think, over a prolonged period between now and, let's say, midweek. Right now, I got a couple of live shots here. One is LaPorte, Texas, and another one here is Galveston. You can see the beaches are kind of not so friendly right now, certainly around Galveston, and of course areas northeast of there in, let's say, northeastern Texas and southwestern Louisiana. It is going to get worse as Tropical Storm Beta moves on in at a fairly slow clip. But let's show you what the tropical storm force winds, the likelihood of seeing, let's say, winds over 40 miles per hour will be like. And what we've got in these areas in, let's say, yellow and orange, we've got tropical storm force wind probabilities of, say, 30 to 40%. And that gives you an idea of what kind of wind threat that we'll be dealing with. It's not really going to be so much of a wind issue, although, of course, you could see some damage with that kind of wind gust. Primarily, this is going to be more of a rain event and maybe some coastal flooding as well. Over the Gulf of Mexico, there are some pretty strong winds out there. Of course, these buoys aren't sampling everywhere, but the idea is that definitely 50-mile-per-hour winds are out there. I just checked the reconnaissance, and they're finding winds of about 50 miles per hour, sustained winds, out over the Gulf of Mexico. So there's still some pretty big waves out there, and there will be some wave run-up. We won't get those, let's say, look at the legend here, 10 to 15-foot waves there in purple. While we may not see those, of course, break right at the beach, they will contribute to some of that coastal flooding potential, and that is sort of exhibited here by the Hurricane Center's storm surge flooding map, which really gives you an idea that we may see some coastal flooding all the way from Corpus Christi through Port O'Connor, Galveston, and even Cameron, Louisiana. Jen.
All right, let's take you into Houston, give you a live look at the city. And we're still seeing some sunshine across the area, but those high clouds kind of moving in. What's that temperature say? 72. That's in downtown Houston. I looked up in the Woodlands north of the city, still hanging on to some 60s. So it's been a kind of a quiet start to the day around Houston. However, the weather's going to change for you as we watch this system get closer towards the Texas coast. It's going to push your rain chances up by this afternoon. Your temperature is going to hold off into the upper 70s today in Houston, and pretty much the same tomorrow. However, tomorrow the wind could be a little bit stronger. We do have the risk for thunderstorms on Tuesday. Again, this is a very slow moving system, so it's going to be with us for a few days and bring us scattered showers and even some isolated thunderstorms. So as we go throughout this Sunday, we're going to time it out for you, and by the later part of this morning, around lunchtime, we'll start to see some of that rain move in, and then may catch a break towards this afternoon, and then more showers could pester us as we head through the evening hours. Again, the heaviest rain is going to be just offshore, but again, it's going to get closer towards the inland areas as we go throughout today, tonight, and throughout tomorrow. And you saw the forecast, going to be with us for a few days. Could add up here as well, maybe 5 inches in a few locations across East Texas. Paul?
And we have coverage of Tropical Storm Beta all day long here in the Weather Channel, all night as well. But it's not the only thing we're watching. Yeah, what about Teddy? Teddy's still hundreds of miles off the east coast of the U.S., but we're feeling the impacts today and, in fact, into this coming week. And we're going to check on the impacts here in North Carolina. And we're also going to check back in on Lake Charles, Louisiana. 25 days after Category 4 Hurricane Loris came ashore, thousands remain out of the homes and even more remain without power.
Age is just a number, and mine's unlisted.
Try Boost High Protein with 20 grams of protein for muscle health versus only 16 grams in Ensure High Protein. And now enjoy Boost High Protein in new Cafe Mocha flavor.
All OTC pain relievers, including Voltaren, have one
Hurricane season doesn't stop for a pandemic, and neither do we.
Remain vigilant, pay close attention to the Weather Channel.
No one can cover this historic hurricane season better than the Weather Channel. Get the information you need to stay safe every day. Storm safety in a pandemic, all season long, right here on the Weather Channel.
Well, the very early morning hours of August 27th, Hurricane Laura crashed on shore in Cameron, Louisiana. At that point, Laura was a Category 4 hurricane. Major hurricane winds gusting up to 137 miles per hour reported as it plowed through Cameron Parish into Calcasieu Parish and the city of Lake Charles. 32 people were killed in Louisiana, and the damage was extensive. Early estimates, $10 billion or more. So far, it's been more than 3 weeks since Laura's impact, and it's been a struggle for many of the survivors there as well, working to clear the debris and repair damage to their homes. Many still without power or running or even clean water in the area as well. For an update on the situation there, we're joined now by Lake Charles Mayor Nick Hunter. Mayor, good morning, and thanks for joining us. And it seems like the country has moved on to Sally last week, now Beta. But you guys have not. You are still kind of stuck in what happened with Laura there. So how are you and even the residents there in your city doing right now?
Well, we're doing okay. We've made some amazing strides in 3 weeks, but we are absolutely still in the thick of recovery. And we're going to be there for weeks and months. You are unfortunately correct that a lot of the nation has moved on from Laura. But let me tell you, every Lake Charles citizen is dealing with the struggle. Many are dealing with the pain that is left over from Laura every day right now.
And now we have Beta out there bringing rain, even right now, to some parts of your area, and forecast to bring more rain to southwestern Louisiana. How concerned are you with that, and what impact is that going to have on not only the recovery efforts, but also just the mindset of still dealing with yet something else tropical coming your way?
We're very concerned, and we're trying to get the message across to locals that we've got to remain vigilant. If 2020 has taught us anything, it is that expect the unexpected. And the idea that we would get hit by another event is not unimaginable at this point, unfortunately, as much as it pains me to say that. So we're very concerned about water from this event, Tropical Storm Beta, but really anything, any water or surge or winds that are related to Tropical Storm is the last thing we need right now in Lake Charles. So it's very concerning.
And most Americans stress out if their phone doesn't work for 5 minutes, let alone, knocking out power, not having running water for an hour or so. But we're talking more than 3 weeks of not having power and for many not having clean water to drink. What type of stress factor is that as we still now moving into almost week 4 without having these basic necessities?
Well, I'll tell you, we've made some strides. The majority of the city does have running water right now, though there is a boil advisory. A majority of our parish does have electricity returned to it from Entergy, but still, to those individuals that don't have power, that's not a very comforting feeling. And so there's a mental health aspect of this that was already tough because of COVID-19, that was already tough because of Laura, and now it's even tougher because people are looking at Tropical Storm Beta. So it does weigh heavily on our population, but we are a resilient people. And if there was any community that could get through 2020, I promise you it's Lake Charles.
All right, Mayor Hunter, maybe you can give some advice to other residents, say in Florida Panhandle or coastal Alabama, or maybe even people who could be going through a beta pretty soon here. What advice would it be, in having hindsight and what you're still going through with Laura?
Well, it's not only Laura, but I'm going to recall back to Hurricane Harvey. And when Harvey actually hit Southwest Louisiana, I don't even believe it was a hurricane anymore. But it was such a slow-moving storm, and the rain was so intense that we did have flooding here in Southwest Louisiana. So my message is to leaders, it's to the population along the Gulf Coast. You can really never let your guard down, especially during hurricane season. And that doesn't mean you have to live every day scared to walk out the front door. but it does mean you have to be vigilant. You have to pay attention to the news, and you have to realize that just because something is not called a hurricane doesn't mean it can't have some severe effects on you and your community.
Great advice. Thank you so much for your time as Mayor Nick Hunter of Lake Charles, Louisiana. And know that we at the Weather Channel are still thinking about you guys, and we have not forgotten about the people there in southwestern Louisiana. Jennifer?
All right, well, coming up on Weekend Recharge, we're bringing you live team coverage, the latest developments as Tropical Storm Beta nears the Gulf Coast. Let's look at the Galveston area where we've already had some rain come on shore. Those waves definitely picking up here. People still out and about, although dangerous surf out there and rip currents are going to be a big concern for us today and tomorrow.
You got to know when to leave town, and that's what we're going to do.
Yes, staying safe and get out of town. Smart decisions from tourists in Port O'Connor, Texas. Voluntary evacuations have been issued for parts of the Texas coast as Tropical Storm Beta inches closer to the coastline there. Now, if you're hunkering down at home, officials warn you should have enough supplies to last several days. Beta is moving at a walking pace now and can produce some heavy rain for several days. And people are there because the water temperature in the mid-80s, part of the reason why we're seeing the tropical storms and hurricanes form so quickly there in the Gulf of Mexico. 6:30 right now as Weekend Recharge is rolling on. This is the last Sunday of summer. Fall begins on Tuesday. Say it ain't so. That's right. Hey, but right now, we're still in the middle of hurricane season. Let's head to our hurricane specialist, Dr. Greg Postel, with the very latest on Tropical Storm Beta.
Yeah, it continues to move slowly westward, closer and closer to the Texas coast. And we are seeing some of the weather even impacting Louisiana as we speak, with heavy rain and some thunderstorms and some gusty winds. New Orleans there gusting to 32 miles per hour. Right now, winds elsewhere across the Texas coastline. The weather actually pretty good and the winds not particularly strong. But there's a cluster of thunderstorms here with a mid-level circulation aloft that is supporting some pretty big thunderstorms right in there. And you can see that recent flare-up has got some pretty strong winds with it, I might add, even though right now it does appear that the lowest pressure at the surface is distant from that by about 50 miles or so. But let's look at that cluster of storms as the hurricane hunters have, and they found winds of high 60s in miles per hour with some of those thunderstorms there on the far northeastern edge of this circulation, and they found 55 or so mile per hour winds, again, probably 75 miles away from where the center of rotation is, at least for now. So we'll be watching these thunderstorms right in here and see if the hurricane hunters find more information on that. It does appear that is a mid-level circulation with some severe weather inside of it. So that could be something that we have to watch, during the next 24 hours. If that kind of weather moves on shore, watch out for 50 to 60 mile per hour winds with some of the worst thunderstorms. But what's really going to control the overall development of Beta is this extremely dry air aloft that is now infesting the circulation and is really now found a home deep inside of the core. So the presence of that dry air is really one of the driving factors why the official forecast from the Hurricane Center actually doesn't have it strengthening anymore and instead brings it on shore, at least at the current intensity, or even a bit weaker, let's say later on Monday night or early Tuesday, and then beginning to pick up at least a little bit of speed moving inland later on in the week. So there's some good news there, Jen. Hopefully this does begin to accelerate later on in the week.
All right. Well, meanwhile, the coast of Texas alert today, watching conditions deteriorate as Beta moves closer. Meteorologist Reynolds Wolf has been monitoring the situation from the fishing mecca of Rockport, Texas, where tourists and residents are preparing for heavy rain, storm surge, and possible tornadoes.
That's right. I'm coming to you from Rockport, Texas, which is home to, 10,000 people. But, you've got a lot of visitors that come here because this is one of Texas' finest fishing spots. In fact, you'll see some folks here taking full advantage of it. But if you look out on that water, those waters full of fish, and right now full of very small waves. But those waves are only going to increase in size because the biggest fish we're watching right now has got a name. It's Beta. Tropical Storm Beta that's going to cause conditions here to go from sunny to cloudy and from sedate to stormy. And with it, we've got a chance of some heavy rain and surge and possibly even some tornadic activity. Take a look at this video. This video is from Port O'Connor just yesterday, and notice people doing the right thing, getting these beautiful boats, getting them in trailers, putting them to dry dock, and in some cases moving them well inland away from some of the threats we could be dealing with. That is the surge and the heavy rain. As of now, rain looks like that's going to be the biggest issue. We're talking some scattered showers that could produce anywhere from 2 to 3 inches of rainfall, some outlying places as much as 8, but there's also the potential we could have as much as a foot or maybe even more of rainfall. But the story does not stay in Texas. We could see it in other places like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, perhaps even into Arkansas and Tennessee by the time we make our way into the end of the week and beyond. Busy times, folks. Know that we have, again, nearly half of tropical season still left. So stay vigilant. On the coast, the eastern seaboard, busy times, no question. Let's send it back to you.
All right, and we're going to continue to update you on the situation from Tropical Storm Beta throughout the morning. Also ahead, Hurricane Sally wrecked hundreds of pleasure boats and yachts along the Gulf Coast earlier in the week. We've got some answers to the question boat owners are asking, what will insurance cover? And later, hurricanes like Laura and Sally rapidly intensifying just before striking land. What are the dangers of what appears to be a growing trend?
Donald Trump is lying.
It has been a disastrous year with deadly wildfires scorching the West and so many hurricanes out in the Atlantic. We're having to utilize the Greek alphabet. Now, to top it off, it's all taking place during the COVID-19 pandemic as crews in California work to contain some of the state's largest fires in history. First responders are also mourning the loss of a firefighter. He was killed in the El Dorado fire, which was sparked by botched pyrotechnics at a gender reveal party. A funeral was held on Friday. So once again, the American Red Cross to the rescue to help with major disaster response. Lori Arnold is the executive director of American Red Cross, and she joins us live from Little Rock, Arkansas, with details on the disaster response. We appreciate you joining us this morning, and we wanted to know if the Red Cross has obviously really had its hands full with so much to do and cover this year. Are they feeling the strain of responding to so many disasters?
So the Red Cross is responding to massive back-to-back disasters, from the wildfires to all the hurricanes we're seeing in the Gulf Coast. And we are looking for, people who are able to help us volunteer. The Red Cross is ready, and we have relief supplies ready to go. We have shelters open. We have feeding missions going. But we always need more help. We always need more volunteers, and we're always looking for more people who are able to support the Red Cross through blood and financial donations as well.
All right, well, throughout the morning, we've been covering another tropical system threatening the Gulf Coast. So are you already planning for that threat?
Yes, we have been planning actually for months for this hurricane season. It's been predicted that it would be, quite a difficult season, and it has been. So we have people who are on the ground. We have volunteers who are on standby ready to go. We have emergency vehicles for feeding ready. So we are prepared for whatever comes to us here and with whatever happens with Beta.
Well, we are so blessed to have you, and I can only imagine what all it involves to get you guys to where, unfortunately, the disasters are. So what are the biggest challenges that you face when you respond to these natural disasters?
One of the things that we really want people to know is if you are told to evacuate, please do so. If you're told to shelter in place, please do that. We want to make sure that people know that if they evacuate, they do have a safe place to go. We have some congregate sheltering. We have some hotel sheltering. We are making sure that people have a safe place. And especially with COVID-19 right now, we want people to know that we are doing everything we can to keep the people we serve safe from COVID-19 exposure as well. So that includes extra protocols such as social distancing, face coverings, extra sanitation, and even sometimes opening up more shelters than normal that could hold fewer people. So what's really important for us to let people know is that there is a safe place to go. And so if you are asked to evacuate, please do so.
And it sounds like you, again, are doing it in a safe manner, of course. So how can people help that maybe want to get involved, or maybe they just can't help in being so involved right now? What are some other ways they can help you guys out?
So there are three main ways that people can help. First of all, you can impact thousands of lives simply by making a donation to the Red Cross. You can also help by volunteering. So whether you're able to volunteer virtually like I'm doing right now, or if you're able to actually go on the ground and help in a shelter or help with our health services, you can go to redcross.org/volunteer today to look at those opportunities. And then another way to help is just by giving blood. So we have had to cancel over 120 blood drives. And therefore, anyone who's able to give blood, we can get blood from any place in the country to wherever it's needed.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lori Arnold, and not just you, but everyone that volunteers for the American Red Cross. We really appreciate all you do. Meanwhile, Hurricane Teddy is way out in the Atlantic, but it is whipping up massive swells here along the East Coast. You add in the high tides, and we're seeing a lot of coastal floodings. Let's get the latest from this and go over to Dr. Greg Postow.
Yeah, Jen, thank you very much. And, you know, a lot of the big waves and the high tides and the coastal flooding along the East Coast is associated with a very cool high pressure over southeastern Canada and the northeasterly winds behind a cold front, which is right about there, by the way. But let's now just really briefly talk about Hurricane Teddy. I know there's a lot on this map, but let's focus on this guy because it's kind of close to Bermuda, and we'll be making a close encounter with it during the next 24 to 36 hours. 105 miles per hour in the wind speed, and the convection, the thunderstorm activity in the middle of it is kind of holding steady for now. We'll see if indeed it continues at that intensity for a while longer. But just for reference, there's Bermuda, and that's about now, or this evening, let's say 8 o'clock tonight, where the center of Teddy will be. And I put on here the wind speeds. So we're seeing in dark blue, 20 to 30 to even 40 miles per hour. Some of those wind gusts may indeed brush Bermuda, but it does appear that the center of Teddy will be far enough to the east by, 100 plus miles so that we should limit the most severe impacts with Teddy on the island of Bermuda. But we will see a very large wind field over the North Atlantic, and some of the 20 to 30 mile per hour wind gusts and coastal flooding may skirt the northeast coast. That would be during the day on Wednesday. But look at this. By Wednesday, we're looking much better. I'm giving it a check mark on the day as the weather begins to improve by the middle of the week. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with all the tropical coverage you need right after the break.
All right, I brought everything weather.
Wow.
Boy, do we have a lot to talk about.
Weather Today from the Weather Channel. New episodes every day, only on Quibi.
We are continuing to monitor the latest tropical system. It's Beta with winds at 60 miles an hour. Closest point is 200 miles away from Galveston. However, we're starting to see the surf pick up, the waves increase, and a little bit of that rain moving in. By this time tomorrow, it'll be about 50 miles closer, perhaps, not coming into the inland or not moving inland until Tuesday morning. So it's going at a slow speed. And then as we head into the end of the week, it'll push up into East Texas and back over to the lower Mississippi River Valley. There are tropical storm warnings in place, and they extend for much of Texas. They also go over into Louisiana. And then we go into South Texas and Corpus southward sees a tropical storm watch. Let's find out a little bit more from what Beta could do with Paul.
Yeah, we're already seeing the clouds and even some rain moving into southeastern Texas, even New Orleans, more rain on tap, all because of Tropical Storm Beta. So the impacts are beginning right now across the Houston area. So, yeah, what's knocking on your door is the outer band. So the rain will begin. Rain is going to be a big concern across much of Houston, even Galveston, with the rain falling right now. By the way, the tide is going out in Galveston. Low tide just after noon. High tide again tonight at 7:30. Roughly, so we can see a bigger push of that water overnight as well and to this evening. So again, the forecast is the rain to come. You see some of those yellows, 3 to 5, some areas perhaps 5 to 8. Reading the discussion from the National Hurricane Center, they're saying even 10, 20 inches on the table there, but some models are printing out 3 or 4 in Houston. Over 3 days, we can handle that. Even 10 inches over 3 days. And that's going to cause some problems. So that's one of the biggest concerns. This is why we have all the flash flood watches up. Not flooding right now, but it has the potential with the forecasted types of rainfall to see that rain. Right now, the center is, not co-located with the heaviest rain. You're seeing that southeastern Louisiana and also pushing just south of the Houston area. We're going to watch this as the center moves closer to land, bring that rain on land as well. Tonight and tomorrow. The forecast right now from the National Hurricane Center, landfall sometime pre-dawn Tuesday morning. So late Monday night, early Tuesday morning. That's when the center comes on. But the impacts, the weather is there. It's already onshore. We're going to see that just increase and grow as we head over the next really 3 days across that region. So here we go from Monday into Tuesday. We have landfall, sun comes up, that rain now is already on land, pushing farther northward into the Arklatex. By Wednesday, back into Louisiana, now pushing into Mississippi, and Wednesday into Thursday, more rain pushing into Alabama and Tennessee, even Georgia. So what happens on the Texas coast in terms of landfall doesn't stay there. It's going to push on to the north and east as Beta starts moving north and east. Right now, the strongest winds are still offshore, but are also co-located with some of those heavier rain bands. So expect that to come onshore. And already, as the tide is going out, we still have a water rise already along the coast of Texas. Some areas at or over 2 feet as we speak. Jen?
Let's head to another area that has been dealing with some rain, and that would be over in East Florida. The Cocoa Beach area has seen increasing waves, as we can see from the tower cam here. Not a lot of people out there on the beach, maybe a few. Oh, now we're going to change it up on us. But you know what is going on across the east coast of Florida is another area of interest. And then what it's going to be doing is kicking up the rain for you. Those waves that we're seeing is actually from a hurricane that is way out here in the Atlantic. And you're saying, well, which one? We got so much going on. We certainly do. It's been like this for a week, so busy out in the Atlantic, and it's going to stay that way. This is a look at the areas, the spots we're keeping an eye on. We just talked about Beta. There's a look at that hurricane that's bringing those waves and high surf all the way to the East Coast, not just to Florida, but anywhere across the East Coast. And we're also keeping an eye out on a system near Central Florida as well. In the Atlantic, we do have a tropical depression, the W storm, and we also have another spot we're keeping an eye on. All right, let's talk about that one that is near Florida. Not a huge chance of developing, and if it does, it's so close to shore that what it's really going to be bringing you is the higher surf and more rainfall and also some breezy weather here. But we're certainly watching it, and we want you to be aware of it. It may ruin your beach plans for today and perhaps even tomorrow across Daytona Beach and farther south. Now we jumped out into the Atlantic. We're close to the Azores Islands. That's near Portugal, or just off to the west. This has a good chance of developing into something, but I think it's going to stay out in the open waters and not be a factor here. Paul?
We're getting ready to roll on to a whole new hour of weekend recharge. And 3 weeks after a Category 4 Hurricane Laura made landfall, we're going to check in with Lake Charles, Louisiana. Thousands remain out of their homes, and even more still don't have power back. And again, we have live team coverage all weekend long of Beta.
This program is brought to you by Land's End, the official outfitter of the Weather Channel.
Well, swirling about 200 miles off the Texas coast, dangerous tropical storm Beta is making its way towards the Texas Gulf Coast, moving at a walking pace. And we can't stress this enough. This is going to be another marathon, not a sprint. Beta could bring days of rainfall, flooding, and life-threatening storm surge. Tropical storm warnings are up from Corpus Christi to Galveston all the way to southwestern Louisiana. The Gulf of Mexico already looking angry as those outer rain bands start to come on shore. Good Sunday morning and welcome to Weekend Recharge. This last Sunday of summer. Fall begins on Tuesday. I'm meteorologist Paul Goodlow. I'm joined by meteorologist Jennifer Lopez in the studio, as well as our hurricane specialist, Dr. Greg Postale. They'll be joining us momentarily now, but we're still watching Beta because now is the time to prepare. Yet another landfall is threatening here, this time in Texas. Let's bring in Dr. Greg Postale to talk all about Tropical Storm Beta. And right now, Dr. Postale, it doesn't look very organized, but we still are going to be dealing with a lot of impacts with this system.
Absolutely, Paul, and we already are, and we were yesterday. Coastal Louisiana got a whole lot of rain, and we still are in this part of the Gulf of Mexico and the Gulf Coast. The new advisory is in. Tropical Storm Beta as of 11 Eastern, 10 o'clock Central, 60 miles per hour in the wind speed, still moving toward the northwest at about 3 miles per hour. So it has not accelerated, but it continues to steadily march its way toward the Texas Gulf Coast. You can see it's going to be moving that way. And overall, we don't see a whole lot of change. The hurricane hunters are in there and did find some pretty strong gusty winds in this collection of thunderstorms right about there. That's about 75 miles to the northwest of the center. But those were some thunderstorms that are probably short-lived and sort of pulsing through a little bit of a life cycle there, not really contributing overall to the strengthening of the system in bulk. But let's have a look at the latest advisories from the Hurricane Center. These are tropical storm warnings in red. And notice they do include areas in coastal Louisiana as far east as Morgan City. Tropical storm watches in parts of southwestern Texas, including Corpus Christi. That does mean that there is a potential for winds gusting over 40 miles per hour with the approach and landfall of Tropical Storm Beta, which looks about like this. This is the newest cone that we've got here, showing you that by this afternoon or tomorrow morning, it will likely still be a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm, and then moving inland probably late Monday or early Tuesday, and then northeastern from there beginning to accelerate. So there's some good news on the horizon. We just got to wait, Jen, these next couple of days out. It could get kind of stormy across parts of the Texas Gulf Coast.
Okay, well, the Texas Gulf Coast is on alert certainly today, and despite the quiet conditions along much of the coast, residents are taking precautions. Meteorologist Reynolds Wolf spent the morning in Rockport, a town that's no stranger to the threat tropical weather can bring.
That's right. I am coming to you from Rockport, Texas, where it has been a beautiful morning. If you hadn't been paying attention to the forecast, you'd think this is just a fantastic September morning. And I'll tell you, for now it is, but changes are on the way. Take a look out over the Gulf of Mexico and beyond. It is just gorgeous out there. I mean, just perfect. But we do expect major changes, again, confidence in the system, so we can expect the clouds to move in and we can expect conditions to truly deteriorate. And that is the reason why we're seeing this video, which shows the story from Port O'Connor just yesterday. People doing the smart thing, getting their boats out of those slips, getting them on trailers, moving them to a safer spot. Some cases a few miles inland, other places even farther inland to know, well, what may be coming in terms of the surge and the pounding rain. In fact, if you look at the forecast, the story is going to be one where we have the abundance of rain coming down. The key takeaway when you have a landfalling tropical system like this is that if it goes a few degrees farther inland, you can see more of a surplus of rain. If it stays farther out to sea, well, the inverse is true. We might see less. But it does, for now, appear that rain is going to be the biggest issue. But know that with these landfalling systems, there's another component. With the wind, with those bands, tornadic activity is not out of the question. So tornadoes could form. When they do, keep it in mind that they're often rain-wrapped and very hard to see. They usually don't last that long, but they can still be very destructive. Lessons learned with other storms and other systems we had earlier this year, namely Isaias, which affected parts of the Carolinas, and still there are areas still cleaning up from some of the tornadic damage as a side effect from that tropical system. All right, that is the story that we have for you in Rockport. Again, the sun is out, the wind is here, and we expect it only to increase. That's the full story. Send it back to you.
Reynolds, thank you very much. Let's have a look at some of the impacts that are already being felt along the northern Gulf Coast in Louisiana and Texas overall. We've got some gusty winds in New Orleans, 29 miles per hour with some heavy rain moving on board just to the south, especially with a lot of thunderstorm activity that's not even showing up on radar all the way out here. And you know how you can tell that? Because of the lightning strikes. There's a lot of lightning out here telling me there's a lot of heavy rain as well that the radar just can't quite see. It's too far away. There is the center of Tropical Storm Beta, still moving toward the northwest fairly slowly at a few miles per hour. We just got the latest advisory in from the National Hurricane Center. If you're tuning in, really no change from the earlier advisory. Still a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm expected to make landfall, let's say, later tomorrow or early Tuesday. And right now we are dealing with fairly manageable conditions along the Gulf Coast, although some rain even begin now to move across parts of Texas. There's a whole burst of thunderstorm activity right about there, about 50 to 75 miles to the northwest of the center. And the hurricane hunters were in there and did indeed find some pretty gusty winds there, close to 60 or 70 miles per hour right in that group of thunderstorms. But that wind is expected to be relatively transient and associated with a burst or a flare-up of thunderstorms, so probably not really representative overall of the circulation. But it does send us a reminder that, you know, if you do, for example, on the Texas Gulf Coast or areas nearby, get a big group of storms moving in, the winds could be gusty quite a bit, and that is something to consider going forward. So what is the sort of overall theme for Beta, and why is it not likely, not impossible, but not likely to strengthen any more than where it is now? Well, that's the answer, or one of them anyway, one of the big ones. Extremely dry air aloft has come in itself, wrapped all the way around and essentially infected this circulation and really gotten a grip on it and not really allowing the thunderstorms to work their magic with the circulation overall. And that is really one of the reasons why we're not likely to see strengthening. I don't know if you saw in that graphic. The relative humidity aloft that's coming into this thing is only a few percent at about 10,000 feet. Now, that's not unusual at all for a fall air mass, but it's not good for a tropical cyclone's health. Tropical systems like the moist environment, it's not in that for sure this time around. So that dry air that's going to be surrounding Beta right around landfall, so let's say tomorrow evening, should keep it manageably strong somewhere around the 60-mile-per-hour range, we think. And then if that's not enough, an upper trough comes in, Paul, to finish it off and begin to accelerate Beta in that direction. Back to you.
Yeah, that trough can't come anytime too soon, that's for sure. Right, new video into the Weather Channel here. The water's starting to rise here in Galveston Bay. Take a look at that. Yeah, you can see the water starting to come up on the front porches of some of these homes. Voluntary evacuation orders are in place for the Bolivar Peninsula. That's that just north of Galveston, the island, the break of Galveston Bay in the Gulf of Mexico. And by the way, the Galveston Ferry has suspended service due to high tide conditions, and the low tide coming up just after noon today. Another high tide right around 7:30 tonight, so expect the water to come up again. And here's the thing, with the offshore flow we're dealing with right now, northerly component, we're seeing a lot of bay side or sound side flooding long before we have the Gulf side flooding. We've seen quite a bit of rain the last couple of weeks here, but good news is not along the immediate Texas coast. And what's missing is the heavy rain we had with Hurricane Laura. That's just outside of September. It's actually late August there. But southwestern Louisiana, you're kind of inundated with rain. So a big concern is we're going to have a lot more rain coming this way. The forecast is kind of a swath here in that yellow. That's easily 3 to 5, some areas perhaps 5 to 8. The National Hurricane Center saying potentially 10 inches. And isolated 20 inches, not out of the question. Remember, just last week with Sally, we saw 30 inches of rain, not everywhere, but in Orange Beach at least. Because of potential for heavy rain, we have the flash flood watches already issued, including you in Galveston and Houston. And right now, you can see on the radar, the center is still offshore, but the rain already onshore. Houston, southern suburbs, League City seeing some rain. Those are the outer bands right now with Beta. So Beta has begun to impact the Houston metro area, and those impacts will continue. Mainly rain initially, then comes the wind. The wind is in some of the heavier rain bands, and as that forecast makes landfall sometime late tomorrow night, early Tuesday morning, some of the most intense winds and the rise of that storm surge coming in as well. So we have a concern with coastal flooding, rainwater flooding, and even that surge flooding along the coast. But it doesn't stop there. It fortunately starts to speed up, as Dr. Postel was talking about, feeling that trough coming in from the west. That will start accelerating on to the north and east. Back into Louisiana, though, Lake Charles, you'll see some rain with this again, not only today, but in through the middle of the week. Then by Thursday, it's starting to push out of Texas and Louisiana, but now pushing that rain Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, even Tennessee as we head on towards the latter part of this coming week. So impacts just beginning now with Tropical Storm Beta. Jennifer?
And Beta's winds and waves are going to pound the coast, the latest in a series of tropical storms and hurricanes to batter this weary region. Erosion can destroy millions of dollars worth of beaches and lead to more trouble for coastlines. Meteorologist Alex Wilson chose
sand cliff where the beach used to be. It's actually a natural process called erosion, which can be found in coastal areas all around the U.S. It happens when the energy of moving water, like waves, pulls sand away from the shore and then deposits it in other places, like deeper water or another coastal area. This can occur gradually, but when the winds and waves kick up, erosion can be quick and dramatic, leaving behind lower and shorter beaches, or sometimes no coastline at all.
There were actually woods at one time. They came and they did hunting. There was lots of land before this occurred. You know, nature goes where it wants to go.
Shorelines that get tropical storms are more at risk than others because of a combination of high tide storm surge mixed with strong waves. But nature's protector, the sand dunes, help separate the lower beach from higher ground. The roots of the dune grasses help anchor the sand in place and keep water from going too far inland. Unfortunately, when humans build along the coast, it can damage those dunes and make erosion worse. And in turn, erosion can make it worse for humans. According to NOAA's U.S. Climate Resilience Toolkit, $500 million worth of coastal property is lost or damaged due to erosion every year. To mitigate that, the federal government spends an average of $150 million each year on beach nourishment and other control measures to try to protect the disappearing coastline. While beach erosion is mostly a natural process that's been happening for ages, human activity is speeding it up, which can cause flooding, damage to roads, and sometimes make entire buildings collapse into the ocean.
Well, conditions are going to go downhill pretty quick across the beaches of Texas. Surf is going to continue to stay high and very choppy, and rip currents are going to be lurking along the coast. Even though it's the final weekend of summer, and I know you want to get out there and swim in it, I really urge you not to. Coastal flooding is also going to be a threat. That'll happen through the middle of the week as we could see some storm surge from Beta. That's anticipated on Monday and Tuesday. So we kind of talked about the rainfall from this. Now let's talk about what it could be doing and bringing to these coastal areas besides all the rain. Let's go over to Greg for that.
Jen, thank you very much. Yeah, we have some, I guess, worsening conditions across parts of the coast of Texas. And you can see that where this is a map of the probability of tropical storm force winds over the next, let's say, 5 days or so. And you can see that the probability is reasonably high in areas from Corpus Christi to Houston, with maybe a greater than 50-50 shot of seeing some tropical storm force wind gusts. So overall, this is the map out ahead of us, and you can see that as we move inland, of course, the probabilities come down because Beta will be weakening once it moves inland. And we think landfall will probably occur, let's say, later tomorrow evening, sometime in the late evening hours. Right now, offshore, there's some pretty gusty winds out there. Here's a couple of buoy sites across the region, 40 to 50 miles per hour, not right on this map, but have been shown by some of the observations out over the water. And even the hurricane hunters are in there right now and finding some gusty winds associated with some thunderstorms on the northeast side that are over 60 miles per hour. So it's pretty windy out there, and some strong wind gusts will likely make it onshore. But with all that wind out there, that's also making it pretty wavy. And you can see that this wave height forecast, and there's a legend up the top, there's 10 to 15 foot waves out there, and even bigger ones than that are going to be roaming the northwestern Gulf of Mexico. And those will contribute as they move a little bit closer to the coast to some wave run up, and overall the chance for some coastal flooding as well. With a storm surge warning out, this is posted from the National Hurricane Center, going from Corpus Christi through Port O'Connor, Galveston, and even Cameron, Louisiana. So this is, again, Jennifer, one of those other aspects of the landfall of Tropical Storm Beta that we have to contend with going forward.
All right, well, let's continue to look across the Texas coast and go up into Houston, a little bit inland here. And we're continuing to see some nice sunshine. In fact, clear skies and comfortable temperatures this morning north of the city, that's for sure. But the weather's going to be going downhill here across Houston and throughout much of East Texas as we're going to be watching the rain kind of kick up here from Beta. And we've had plenty of rain from past tropical storms in the area. So let's look at your forecast into Houston. And later today, those showers are going to be moving in. Now, it's going to hold your temperatures down and keep those numbers in the 70s. Tomorrow, waking up to low 70s as well, staying in the middle 70s through the afternoon. The wind could be a little bit stronger for you tomorrow. And then as we move into Tuesday, that's when we see the chance for some thunderstorms. Even looking for some rain at least through Wednesday morning here across Houston. So a good chance for this prolonged rain event across parts of Texas. Well, stay with the Weather Channel for all-day coverage of Beta. We'll be bringing you the latest developments as this happens, plus expert analysis you won't see anywhere else.
You're watching America's most trusted TV news network,
We've got a severe weather threat.
Winds have been gusting the full force of this thing.
the Weather Channel. Hurricane season doesn't stop for a pandemic, and neither do we.
Remain vigilant, pay close attention to the Weather Channel.
No one can cover this historic hurricane season better than the Weather Channel. Get the information you need to stay safe every day. Storm safety in a pandemic, all season long, right here on the Weather Channel.
We're also tracking Hurricane Teddy. The good news is it's nowhere near the U.S., but it is still causing impacts here in the U.S., specifically coastal North Carolina. This was the scene at Pea Island yesterday as water submerged a road during low tide. Yeah, during low tide. A gale warning is in effect for the area through Monday evening. So we got the strong onshore winds. We have high astronomical tides. We have large swells because of Teddy. All those are ingredients for more coastal flooding all across the Outer Banks and much of the east coast of the U.S. as we head on through this closing weekend of summer. So let's bring in Sam Walker. He's the news director at obxtoday.com. He joins us from CoinJock, North Carolina this morning. Thanks for joining us. And let's get right to it. 2 to 4 feet of inundation above normal dry ground is the forecast. Is that enough to put the island's main road, Highway 12, underwater?
It is in spots. It's not going to be a full coverage event, but we've got a lot of hot spots that run from Oregon Inlet to Ocracoke. But the main focus on this system, it appears, is going to be in areas like Pea Island, headed into Rodanthe, in the village of Avon, and it should come into Buxton. Those are really the places that we're watching for the overwash that's going to probably be coming in with this next high tide around 11 o'clock. It seems like it's going to be less of an event for the towns such as Nags Head, Killable Hills, Kitty Hawk, Southern Shores, and Duck. And those folks who may be going to Corolla and Corova and Swan Beach and the Currituck Outer Banks, you have to drive on the beach to get to some of those spots. They're going to be dealing with being not able to get to and from those locations, at least during the high tide today and into tomorrow.
And not just with the high water, you also have some swells, you have waves as well. So how bad is the beach erosion issue with this system?
It could get worse as we get over the next couple of days. We've had a sustained northeast wind really for the last week and a half. We've been lucky enough that we haven't had a lot of beach erosion. We've had several places that have spots that have been nourished over the last couple of years, but those spots that haven't, and those are really on Hatteras Island, those places are probably going to lose a lot of sand out of this system, especially because it's just going to be around for a couple of more days with these 30-mile-an-hour winds on shore, these 8 to 10 foot to 11 foot breaking waves that are going to be knocking that sand out. So we are going to probably lose some beach out of this in a lot of spots that already were in not good shape.
All right, Sam, some real talk here. I've been to the Outer Banks. It's a beautiful part of the coast, but it's barrier islands. They're traditionally transitional. So, we have climate change, rising sea levels, stronger storms. We still have issues not only during the summer, but also during the winter storms. Why are people still there? Why don't we just kind of pull them off? Are we just putting good money after bad? Because, the problems keep mounting, and we're seeing more and more of these every single year.
Well, one thing about it, when you live here, it's just part of life here. And people have lived on these barrier islands for 4 centuries. And, yes, they have moved, and yes, they are changing all the time. And at the same time, they are such a huge economic driver, not just for northeastern North Carolina, but North Carolina as a whole. And the money that's spent for beach nourishment has really turned itself around. And when I say the return on investment has been great, because we haven't seen the loss of beach that we had, the loss of homes, the damage and destruction that we've seen out of not just hurricanes, but winter storms. We used to have houses knocked in all the time. That's really changed since we started the beach nourishment projects here. And yes, we're going to be dealing with climate change. We're going to be dealing with this rising sea level issue for decades and decades to come, it looks like. But it seems like we are at least going down the right path. And yeah, barrier islands, they move. It's just part of life here on the edge of the continental shelf.
All right. Big thank you for your time this morning. It's Sam Walker, news director for OBX today. Sam, always good to talk to you.
Paul, thank you very much. Let's have a look at the overview in the Atlantic. It remains extremely active out there with, of course, Tropical Storm Beta in the Gulf of Mexico right there. We have a new area to watch just off the Florida coast. I'll see if I can have a look at that in a second. But I'm going to focus on Teddy right now, which is a hurricane not that far away from Bermuda. Let's see, about 300 miles away as of the latest advisory. 105 miles per hour in the wind speed. There's the center, roughly, with a lot of thunderstorms still around it. And by the way, there is Bermuda. So let's track the wind with Teddy as it gets closer to Bermuda, beginning at about 8 o'clock tonight. And you can see that Teddy moves to the east of Bermuda, very likely by a good enough distance to keep the worst of the winds well offshore. But we could still very well see, let's see, 20 to 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts across parts of the island. And then Teddy moves northward from there into the North Atlantic, scraping, let's say, the northeast with maybe 20 to 30 mile per hour wind gusts and some cooler and drier weather on the way soon thereafter. As Teddy goes on its way about like that, I'm going to put a smiley face out here because I like the weather force on Wednesday across parts of the Northeast. Drier and sunny weather should move in fairly quickly. But look at this. I mean, what is going on here? This is what's very actually likely on the Florida coast right now, a 10% chance. Let's zoom in on this guy. Yeah, there's a little bit of a swirl right here, and we'll be watching it to see if it comes back out over the Gulf. We'll be right back.
What kind of value are you looking for?
I have a new video into the Weather Channel. That's high tide coming in, kind of creeping into the front yards of these homes here in Galveston, Texas. And by the way, voluntary evacuations have been issued for parts of the Texas coast as Tropical Storm Beta inches closer and closer to making landfall sometime late tomorrow night, early Tuesday morning. Now, if you are going to stay at home, officials say you need to have enough supplies. Talking about food, including drinking water, to last several days. Beta is a slow mover and can produce heavy rain for several days. And some of the forecasts say isolated spots 10 to 20 inches, not out of the question. Hopefully we'll see, half on the low end of that as well. It's half past the hour right now as Weekend Recharge is rolling on. This is the last Sunday of summer. Yeah, fall begins on Tuesday, but we are still in the midst of hurricane season. Let's go right to our hurricane specialist, Dr. Greg Postel. And latest advisory, Dr. Postel, it finally has this thing moving, but it's still moving only at a walking pace. 3 miles per hour is a comfortable pace to walk, very similar to what Sally was doing just days ago.
Yeah, but this is no Sally, thank goodness, Paul. And we are dealing with Beta as a tropical storm moving closer to the Texas coast, bringing impacts already to parts of southern Louisiana. Very heavy rain and gusty winds, we know that. Also now starting to get some rain and some gusty winds along the Texas coast near Galveston, for example, with a cluster of angry thunderstorms here. But guess what? The center of circulation is actually, we think, somewhere about over there. So there's lots of showers and thunderstorms distantly removed from where the center of circulation is, which we think is right about there. And there's a flare-up of nasty and angry thunderstorms here with severe thunderstorms in progress along that flight leg. The hurricane hunters found winds near 70 miles per hour. But those are associated, we think, with a relatively transient group of thunderstorms and not really representative of the overall circulation and the intensity of Tropical Storm Beta, which has been kept at a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm as of the latest advisory a half an hour ago by the National Hurricane Center. Incidentally, on this leg, most recently traversed by the hurricane hunters, finding winds of 40 to 50 miles per hour overall, with the lowest pressure somewhere around in there. So we're seeing a relatively unorganized system in front of our eyes. There's been wind shear over the last couple of days, and that has allowed some extremely dry air aloft to find itself all the way around the circulation. So this is not in a healthy environment, which means the likely intensification, or the likelihood, I should say, of intensification is not really high. Hurricane Center has it as a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm closing in on the northern Texas coast there, let's say, early tomorrow morning, and then maybe even making it on shore by tomorrow evening, Monday evening, and then weakening fairly quickly afterwards and moving northeastward at a quicker pace by midweek. But of course, Jennifer, the biggest story will probably be the heavy rain it will bring on board.
Meanwhile, the Texas coast is on alert today, watching conditions deteriorate as Beta moves closer. Meteorologist Reynolds Wolf has been monitoring the situation from Texas. Actually, he's been in the Fisher Mecca capital of Rockport, where tourists and residents are preparing for heavy rain, storm surge, and even possible tornadoes.
That's right. I'm coming to you from Rockport, Texas, which is home to, let's see, 10,000 people. But, you know, you've got a lot of visitors that come here because this is one of Texas' finest fishing spots. In fact, you'll see some folks here taking full advantage of it. But if you look out on that water, those waters full of fish, and right now full of very small waves, but those waves are only going to increase in size because the biggest fish we're watching right now has got a name. It's Beta, Tropical Storm Beta, that's going to cause conditions here to go from sunny to cloudy and from sedate to stormy. And with it, we've got a chance of some heavy rain and surge and possibly even some tornadic activity. Take a look at this video. This video is from Port O'Connor just yesterday, and notice people doing the right thing, getting these beautiful boats, getting them in trailers, putting them to dry dock, and in some cases moving them well inland away from some of the threats we could be dealing with. That is the surge and the heavy rain. As of now, rain looks like that's going to be the biggest issue. We're talking some scattered showers that could produce anywhere from 2 to 3 inches of rainfall, some outlying places as much as 8. But there's also the potential we could have as much as a foot or maybe even more of rainfall. But the story does not stay in Texas. We could see it in other places like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, perhaps even into Arkansas and Tennessee by the time we make our way into the end of the week and beyond. Busy times, folks. Know that we have, again, nearly half of tropical season still left. So stay vigilant. On the coast, the eastern seaboard, busy times, no question. Let's send it back to you.
And we are going to continue to update you on the situation from Tropical Storm Beta throughout the morning. Also ahead, Hurricane Sally wrecked hundreds of pleasure boats and yachts along the Gulf Coast. And we've got some answers to the questions boat owners are asking. What will insurance cover? And later, hurricanes like Laura and Sally rapidly intensifying just before striking land. Is that a growing trend?
Welcome back to Weekend Recharge. One of the biggest casualties, from Hurricane Sally. You see it there. A lot of the boats here, hundreds of them. Sally's wind and surge hurled them against each other, even slammed many of them into homes. Others simply could not stand up to the winds and waves and went down to the bottom of some bayous and some marinas as well. Of course, Sally's winds and storm surge also wrecked hundreds of homes along the Gulf Coast as well. Homeowners are scrambling now to file insurance claims and get insurance adjusters out there to assess their property damage so they can move forward with their lives. Let's talk about this and bring in Mark Friedlander. He's the Director of Corporate Communications for the Insurance Information Institute. Thanks for joining us this morning. Let's start with those pictures of those boats. I saw them firsthand. They were everywhere, some in swimming pools, some on dry land, some on roads as well. So who pays for this? So is it the boat owner is liable because they didn't get their boat out of the water, or will insurance pay for this?
Well, the good news is if you have boat insurance, you are covered for both wind and water damage. However, we strongly recommend, as you talked about with Beta a few minutes ago, take your boat out of water before the storm comes your way. You don't want to have to worry about filing an insurance claim after the storm.
So let's talk about property, homes as well. Now, homeowners insurance, it definitely covers the wind damage with a hurricane or tropical storm, but you actually need a flood policy for storm surge damage. So what happens if my home has both types?
Well, the good news is you're well protected if you have both windstorm coverage and flood coverage. And we see a lot of residents in the coastal areas have flood insurance, which is great. But if you move a little further inland, we've seen take-up rates as low as just 1%. So virtually nobody outside of the coastal zones has flood coverage, and that's a real concern.
Well, let's talk about a lot of trees coming down here. So what happens if a tree falls on my house? But also what happens if that tree is my neighbor's tree, but it's falling on my house? Who pays?
It doesn't matter. The windstorm coverage covers both trees that are in your yard and trees that may come from the neighbor's yard. So you are well protected from tree damage.
All right, what if you have a car in your garage or driveway, it's got a combination of water in it as well as a tree fell on it. So is that homeowner's insurance claim or is that an auto insurance claim?
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize if you're not driving the car, you still need a particular type of auto insurance. It's called comprehensive auto. About 80% of drivers across the country have it, and that covers all storm damage, all non-collision, trees falling on the car, water damage to the car, but you must have the comprehensive auto to have that type of coverage.
And that's even if it's, say, in a garage too, in part of your house?
Exactly. Say if the house collapses on the car is destroyed, it's not your homeowner's insurance, it's your comprehensive auto that covers that loss.
Well, a lot of things, hurdles you got to get through. So what are the processes? A lot of people are just now getting power back and maybe getting some information. How do I start? What do you need to do a claim? Can you go ahead and get your essentials to get yourself just living day to day? I mean, what's the process of recovering from this insurance-wise?
Well, number one, you want to contact your insurance agent or carrier as soon as possible to report the loss, find out what type of coverage you have so you know going in what will be covered. Take photos or videos of the damage as best you can if it's safe to do so. And then ask your agent or carrier, is it okay for you to you need some essential supplies that you could buy and get reimbursed for. So keep all your receipts, and most likely your insurance will cover you for some of those basics as well as you try to recover from the loss.
Yeah, and remember, it's just things, it's not people. And luckily, a low death toll with this, Sally, but still, even one is too many. Great information. Thank you so much. It's Mark Friedlander at the Insurance Information Institute. We really appreciate information that you are giving to us and our viewers as well. Jennifer?
Well, increasing high tide from the Outer Banks in North Carolina forcing officials to close Highway 12. It's one of the main roads in and out of the barrier islands, and it often floods. You can see in this picture, ocean has just come up and overwashed the highway, and the high tide is being aggravated by the Hurricane Teddy, which is spinning way out in the Atlantic. So again, here across northeastern North Carolina, we're getting impacted from a hurricane that is hundreds of miles away. In fact, the closest point is 300 miles to the south of Bermuda. It's a pretty strong hurricane with winds at 105 miles an hour. It will go near Bermuda, but I think it's going to pass just to the east of it. There is a tropical storm warning, though, posted for the island. In fact, as we look at the projected path, it continues that just to stay just east of Bermuda. It is going to impact Nova Scotia Tuesday night and practically over into Newfoundland by Wednesday morning. It's going to be a strong system when it comes up into the eastern Canadian Maritimes. What it's doing to the east coast, though, is providing some high surf, some big swells, and we're also seeing some coastal beach erosion. Rip currents are going to be a huge concern for today and tomorrow. And again, take it easy out there on those beaches. You have to go out, make sure you're by a lifeguard there. All right, we're going to continue our coverage of tropics for the rest of the day, so stay with us.
America's most trusted TV news network.
We've got a severe weather threat.
Winds have been gusting the full force of this thing.
The Weather Channel.
We are looking at Houston right now, a live look of the downtown area, and this has really changed within the past hour as those higher clouds have moved in and covering up the city. We had a nice sunrise and a kind of a comfortable start to the day, but the weather is changing for us, and it's all because of Beta. Tropical storm Beta is about 200 miles away from Galveston. We're starting to see those clouds move in. But we're also seeing the rain. One other spot that's seeing showers is right across the northern Gulf Coast. There you see Destin right now. That rain is kicking in and that surf has also been picking up. So again, not the best of beach days here. And we're going to continue to see the weather kind of go downhill. And as the center of circulation goes towards the Texas coast, slowly over the next 2 to 3 days, it is going to still be bringing many areas from Louisiana, Mississippi, and even into parts of Alabama and North Florida, some scattered showers and windy weather. Here's a look at the tropical storm warning that is in place for Galveston as well as other areas across Texas. Let's have a closer look at this storm and go over to Paul.
Hey, you showed the tower cam there of Houston, Jennifer. We're seeing some rain right now on the radar, getting closer and closer, basically kind of rolling east or westward along I-10 and even up I-45 there. So it's a matter of minutes, really, that Houston, you'll start feeling the rain, the initial rain with Beta. Once this rain starts, it might not stop completely until maybe Wednesday or Thursday of this week. So flash flooding is a concern. And by the way, New Orleans, more rain coming for you. And even, Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, Dolphin Island, Mobile. Your rain is also from Tropical Storm Beta as you recover from Hurricane Sally. So again, seeing a lot of impacts with this, but the majority of rain is going to drift on towards the Texas coast as we head on through the next, say, 36 hours. Landfall sometime late tomorrow night, early Tuesday morning, but it's not over with landfall. That's just the center making landfall. We have weather well north and east of that center also making landfall, staying on land for days and days and days, giving us rain for a couple of days. And that's one of the biggest widespread threats here. It's going to be the rain. Flash flood watches have been issued. So you can see a lot of that rain is associated kind of northwest of the center as well as northeast of the center as well. So some dry air on the south side. Unfortunately, the north side is pushing onshore right now, and will continue to do so today into tomorrow. Hence, the flash flood risk is going to grow for every hour we actually have rain falling on land. You can see making landfall early Tuesday, continue to push northeastward now on Wednesday. At this point, it should go a little faster but it's still going to bring some rain. The rain slowly pulling out of Texas, slowly pulling out of Louisiana as we head throughout the day on Wednesday and Thursday. They're pushing into Alabama and Georgia, even Tennessee. Offshore winds are gusting pretty close to tropical storm force winds. So we'll have some areas seeing wind, but you're also feeling the wind on the ocean in terms of already seeing a rise over 2 feet roughly along the Texas coast. And we'll see that a big concern because you do have storm surge warnings in place. 2 to 4 foot water rise expected. Portions of southwestern Louisiana all the way on towards Corpus Christi. Jen?
Very busy still across the Atlantic. This has been the scene for several weeks now. So many areas to keep an eye on. A few tropicals or systems that are named, such as Beta, Teddy, as well as Wilford, which is out in the middle of the Atlantic. We go a little bit closer into Florida. There is an area which has a small chance of developing. It is right over Cape Canaveral right now. It's pretty close to land. So this is just going to bring you more showers as well as the higher surf in through the area. Again, it's pretty close to land, so there is the possibility it could develop, but I don't think it's going to be anything strong if it does that. Where are we? We're way out in the Azores. That's in the middle of the Atlantic. And here's a system which has a higher chance of developing into something, a 60% chance. But it looks like it's going to stay south of the Azores and stay in that general area in the open waters. Now we're talking about the tropical depression in the middle of the ocean. This system is about 1,000 miles away from the Cape Verde Islands. It's moving away from those islands. It's going to weaken as it does so. So really not a huge threat here out in the middle Atlantic. Again, very busy in through the tropics with several systems from Beta as well as the spot in Florida. And also keep an eye on Teddy, which could be bringing some higher swells across the East Coast and then eventually into the eastern maritime areas of Canada. Paul?
We have a whole another hour of Weekend Recharge ahead for you. 3 weeks after Category 4 Hurricane Laura came rumbling ashore, we're going to check back in with Lake Charles, Louisiana. Thousands are still out of the homes, and even more are without power. And we'll track that for you, as well as all-day coverage of Tropical Storm Beta continues here.
It's especially important.
It's rolling about 200 miles off the coast of Texas. Dangerous Tropical Storm Beta making its way slowly on towards the Texas Gulf Coast. It's moving at just a comfortable walking pace, but we can't stress this enough. We've seen this with Sally. This is going to be a marathon, not a sprint towards landfall and beyond. Beta could bring days of rainfall, which means more flooding and even life-threatening storm surge. Tropical storm warnings are up just north of Corpus Christi through Galveston, all the way into and through southwestern Louisiana. The Gulf of Mexico already looking angry as those outer rain bands start to come onshore. Well, good Sunday to you and welcome to Weekend Recharge. This is the last Sunday of summer. Fall begins on Tuesday, but doesn't mean that hurricane season is over. No, by far it does not, because right now we're dealing with Tropical Storm Beta. Yes, we've exhausted the normal names now into the Greek alphabet, and this one has designs of making landfall, yet another landfall on the Texas coast. And thanks for joining us. I'm meteorologist Paul Goodlow. I'm joined by meteorologist Jennifer Lopez in the studio, as well as our hurricane specialist, Dr. Greg Postel. Let's get right to Dr. Postel to give us the latest on Tropical Storm Beta.
Well, we have the advisory in from 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central on Tropical Storm Beta, and it is still a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm moving west, as you said, or west-northwest very slowly at just a few miles per hour. There's where the center of circulation is. You can see it by that icon with a lot of thunderstorm activity on its edge and not necessarily on its close edge, kind of far away. Some areas in southern Louisiana are right now experiencing some very heavy rain and some gusty winds, some 300 miles away or so from the center. Let's have a look at some of the tropical storm warnings out that we've got for parts of southern Louisiana and coastal Texas, and then tropical storm watches out there for parts of Texas south of Corpus Christi. Overall, this is the forecast. This is the cone from the Hurricane Center for Tropical Storm Beta. If you remember yesterday, the cone had shrunk down quite a bit and looked more like a broken balloon. It has now been expanded a little bit because we're starting to see a little bit further in time, and it does indeed suggest that we will see an acceleration of Beta eventually by mid and late week, sort of toward the northeast as an upper trough and the jet stream comes in and swoops it away. But until then, we will have significant impacts. We will have rain and gusty winds as a tropical storm Beta closes in on the Texas coast, somewhere in there between Corpus and Houston, likely as a tropical storm late Monday or early Tuesday. Jen, back to you.
All right, and we're certainly going to keep an eye on this system as it plagues portions of western Gulf of Mexico. And we have our reporters, meteorologists right there along the coast. So let's go to Reynolds Wolf. He has been monitoring the situation from Rockport.
That's right. I am coming to you from Rockport, Texas, where it has been a beautiful morning. If you hadn't been paying attention to the forecast, you'd think this is just a fantastic September morning. And I'll tell you, for now it is, but changes are on the way. Take a look out over the Gulf of Mexico and beyond. It is just gorgeous out there. I mean, just perfect. But we do expect major changes, again, confidence in the system, so we can expect the clouds to move in and we can expect conditions to truly deteriorate. And that is the reason why we're seeing this video, which shows the story from Port O'Connor just yesterday. People doing the smart thing, getting their boats out of those slips, getting them on trailers, moving them to a safer spot. Some cases a few miles inland, other places even farther inland, to know, well, what may be coming in terms of the surge and the pounding rain. In fact, if you look at the forecast, the story is going to be one where we have the abundance of rain coming down. The key takeaway when you have a landfalling tropical system like this is that if it goes a few degrees farther inland, you can see more of a surplus of rain. If it stays farther out to sea, well, the inverse is true. We might see less. But it does, for now, appear that rain is going to be the biggest issue. But know that with these landfalling systems, there's another component. With the wind, with those bands, tornadic activity is not out of the question. So tornadoes could form. When they do, keep it in mind that they're often rain-wrapped and very hard to see. They usually don't last that long, but they can still be very destructive. Lessons learned with other storms and other systems we had earlier this year, namely Isaias, which affected parts of the Carolinas, and still there are areas still cleaning up from some of the tornadic damage as a side effect from that tropical system. All right, that is the story that we have for you in Rockport. Again, the sun is out, the wind is here, and we expect it only to increase. That's the full story. Send it back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Reynolds. We are still dealing with some impacts right along the northern Gulf Coast from Tropical Storm Beta. The center is right about there, but look at all this heavy rain and thunderstorm activity coming into the mouth of Mississippi and parts of southern Louisiana. We're seeing gusts of up to 30 miles per hour in New Orleans, picking up a little bit in Houston with one of these outer rain bands about ready to skirt through. And overall, some gustier wind and some worse weather on the way slowly today across parts of far southwestern Louisiana and coastal Texas. The center circulation is there, but a lot of the big thunderstorms, anyway, near the center, are slightly dislocated to the north and northwest of where the center of circulation is. That's where, believe it or not, about an hour and a half ago, the hurricane hunters flew through there and found some pretty strong winds associated with some of those thunderstorms. Now, you might think, well, why is it a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm with a surface wind estimate closer to 70? Well, that's because that was with some thunderstorms that were associated with a transient feature that's really not representative of the system overall. So it's not expected that that kind of wind would last too long, and instead we'll be dealing with more like a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm, even with the next advisory that comes out. But we'll see, right? Because the hurricane hunters are still in there. They've flown their way through like that, came like that. They're flying that pattern, and now they're all the way over here and doing the butterfly dance through Tropical Storm Beta. Right now, a lot of dry air aloft is circulating into the system as it really began to do so yesterday. That became very obvious on the satellite pictures. That's one of the reasons why Beta is not likely to strengthen beyond where it is now, and that is reflected in the official forecast from the Hurricane Center. Look at this. We have relative humidities, less than 5% aloft, 10,000 feet up above the ground. It is bone dry. That's not unusual, right, with sort of fall air masses, but it's not good for tropical cyclones if they want to strengthen, I can tell you that. And that is probably what is going to, well, be a big factor in preventing Beta from getting any stronger than it is now. Now, that's not a guarantee. It could, but it's just not likely. And instead, we'll be dealing with a landfalling tropical storm with a lot of dry air in and around it. Still, heavy rain, gusty winds from time to time, and also very likely some coastal flooding with that. Has to be considered the greatest impacts. But it looks like that by late Tuesday and Wednesday, Paul, a big upper trough in the jet stream is going to come in and begin to accelerate it away from the Texas coast a bit sooner than maybe some of us thought about a day ago.
That would be great news to have it move on out here, because take a look at this. Yeah, boat owners, well, they're taking no chances with Tropical Storm Beta, and hey, it's a good thing to do. After what happened in Gulf Shores with Hurricane Sally, a lot of people in Port O'Connor, they decided to pull their boats out of the dock, which is some great news, to higher ground. And saw a lot of boat damage with Sally just a couple of days ago. Port O'Connor under a tropical storm and tropical storm surge warning as well. So another concern is the heavy rain. This map just shows you the last 3 weeks of rain. The good news is you don't see a lot of the reds and oranges right around coastal Texas. We see more of it inland up towards, say, even the Dallas, Fort Worth, Waco area. So we could deal with some rain, and that's what we have. Not just some rain. Some models 3 to 4 to maybe even 14 to 20 inches of rain, not unheard of here across the region. So there's concern for the rain. In fact, some models are putting out already widespread 3 to 5 inches. If that's like over 3 or 5 days, we can definitely deal with that. If it's in 1 day, you got some problems. 5 to 8 also causing a problem in just 2 days or so. So flash flood watches have been issued, including you in Galveston and Houston. And right now, the heavy rain is well away from that center, so that's going to be already be on shore hours before landfall. Landfall perhaps sometime late tomorrow night into early Tuesday. But as Dr. Patel was talking about, that trough is going to move on towards the Texas coastline, make landfall, then feel that trough as we head on towards Tuesday and Wednesday. And hopefully that will quickly pull the center, the rotation, the storm, as well as that moisture up and out of Texas and Louisiana to give us a chance to dry out. But right now, the models are saying, look for that rain, once you get it, to continue on again, off again through perhaps Wednesday before that trough pulls it up and out of the Texas, Louisiana area. That also pushes that rain into other areas in the southeast and Gulf Coast, Mississippi, Alabama, even Georgia, and the Florida Panhandle. You're seeing rain right now with the system. You could see more as we head on towards the middle, latter part of this coming week. Jen?
Well, weather is going to start to go downhill across the beaches of Texas today. Surf already been high and choppy, and those rip currents are lurking along the shore. Even though it is the final weekend of summer, and I know you want to get out there and enjoy that water, try not to. Those rip currents are going to be dangerous, and the surf is going to really be choppy and pretty high. Coastal flooding is also going to be a threat right through the middle of the week as we watch some storm surge approach this area. So let's find out a little bit more about the surge and the what this could do to the beaches, and go back to Greg for that.
Well, we'll see some big waves, Jennifer. Thank you very much. We'll see some big waves and some coastal flooding. Even now, we're seeing some of that there in the lower part of your screen. This is Galveston, Texas, and we're seeing some angry seas overall. That's been the theme today, even yesterday as well. And then, of course, La Porte, Texas, just to the north, the weather is gradually getting a bit worse. And that is going to be the theme across many areas in North Texas, where we have storm surge alerts out here, with storm surge warning all the way from Corpus Christi through Port O'Connor, Galveston, and even Cameron, Louisiana. I'm going to ask my weather producer, Erica Lopez, if she can get me back to the beginning of my sequence here, because I do want to show you eventually the probability of tropical storm force winds, which does include parts of coastal Texas, where we could see probably a 50% chance of seeing some wind gusts of up to 50 miles per hour. Are we able to get that graphic in there? That would be good, because I think it goes along with this storm surge map, which gives us an idea that not just some minor coastal flooding, but also there's a potential for some wind damage along the way. And there it is. This is the probability of winds, let's say, gusting over 40 miles per hour in the next 5 days, but really only goes through, let's say, later tomorrow and early Tuesday. Right in there, just to the southwest of Houston, that's where that greatest probability is, and it's somewhere around 50-50. So bottom line is, inland wind threat is not such a big deal with this system. We could see some pretty strong gusts along the coast, depending on how it all shakes out in the next 24 hours. But if you look at some of these buoys out there right now, we're seeing gusts of 30 to 40 miles per hour pretty commonly around the region. And that's, of course, a very small sample of all the winds out there, because we know the hurricane hunters are out there and finding some wind gusts over 60 miles per hour just to the northwest of the center. So there's a lot of wind out there, and some of that will come on board, and that could bring some issues in terms of wind damage here and there. But primarily, It's going to be a rain event and maybe some coastal flooding with the big waves out there contributing to that what's called storm surge inundation, which I showed you earlier. Here's some of the wave forecasts for, let's say, tomorrow morning. There's a legend up there. We're talking maybe some 10-foot swells out there, significant wave heights, meaning the top third of the waves will be that big. There'll be some bigger ones than that for sure. But overall, that's going to contribute to that chance of that coastal flooding, which is why, going back to what I showed you in the beginning, the Hurricane Center has put out that storm surge warning from Corpus Christi all the way through parts of southwestern Louisiana. Jennifer.
All right, let's head up to Houston, and what we've been noticing is the rain starting to move in as we see those showers come through. So here is a look at the forecast for Houston. You're going to probably see rain for the next 3 days. Maybe even into Wednesday morning, as showers and the wind is going to be with us. Watch out for a few isolated thunderstorms as well across Houston. Now, again, we've been watching the rain coming into Hobby right now. League cities reporting rain and wind. Galveston was just reporting a wind gust almost to 40 miles an hour. We're going to continue to see these scattered showers kind of off and on throughout the day. I know it's hard to plan around that. But again, just make sure you have the umbrella. Make sure you're paying attention to that road in front of you, that it's not flooded out or something, because this rain could be very heavy at times. You can see it's just going to continue through the overnight hours and right into tomorrow. This is a look at the total amount that we could see over the next 5 days. Some impressive amounts, especially across Houston and south of town, where anywhere from 4 to 5 inches is expected. Now we've crossed over into Louisiana, and that rain's coming your way as well into Lake Charles. And look out for the wind and isolated thunderstorms, maybe even some tornadic activity. We always have to warn you about that when we see these tropical systems. Heavy rain coming into Louisiana as well. We've been noticing that rain into Baton Rouge as well as over and towards New Orleans and even across North Florida throughout the morning. We're going to see more of that with this system. So for New Orleans, pretty much the same forecast. Again, this will keep your temperatures down in the 70s. Overnight lows stay in the 70s as well with those showers in the forecast. Looks like some of the heaviest rain will be right down towards the beach and the coast. South of I-10 is where we could pick up anywhere from 3 to 4 inches of rain. There's the concern tomorrow with the threat for those possible thunderstorms. Again, an isolated tornado cannot be ruled out anywhere from the coast of Louisiana, including Beaumont, and it takes you all the way down towards the Aransas Bay. So again, keep an eye out for that with the possibility for these thunderstorms. All right, let's get back over to Paul now.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. We're still watching everything with Beta. We got all day long coverage, but also this is not just a Texas concern. New Orleans, yeah, we're going to see some rain coming your way. And by the way, these already are causing flooding here in the Outer Banks. We're going to talk about how long this will last and also why it's not just a concern for North Carolina. Falling in New Orleans on this Sunday. You'll see more rain from Beta than you ever did with Sally.
Everything weather.
Wow! Boy, do we have a lot to talk about.
Weather Today from the Weather Channel. New episodes every day, only on Quibi. Hurricane season doesn't stop for a pandemic, and neither do we.
Remain vigilant, pay close attention to the Weather Channel.
No one can cover this historic hurricane season better than the Weather Channel. Get the information you need to stay safe every day. Storm safety in a pandemic, all season long, right here on the Weather Channel.
The very early morning hours of August 27th, Hurricane Laura crashed on shore in Cameron, Louisiana. At that point, Laura was a Category 4 hurricane. Major hurricane winds gusting up to 137 miles per hour recorded as it plowed through Cameron Parish into Calcasieu Parish and the city of Lake Charles. 32 people were killed in Louisiana, and the damage was extensive. Early estimates, $10 billion or more. So far, it's been more than 3 weeks since Laura's impact, and it's been a struggle for many of the survivors there as well, working to clear the debris and repair damage to their homes. Many still without power or running or even clean water in the area as well. For an update on the situation there, we're joined now by Lake Charles Mayor Nick Hunter. Mayor, good morning, and thanks for joining us. And it seems like the country has moved on to Sally last week, now Beta. But you guys have not. You are still kind of stuck in what happened with Laura there. So how are you and even the residents there in your city doing right now?
Well, we're doing okay. We've made some amazing strides in 3 weeks, but we are absolutely still in the thick of recovery, and we're going to be there for weeks and months. You are unfortunately correct that a lot of the nation has moved on from Laura, but let me tell you, every Lake Charles citizen is dealing with the struggle. Many are dealing with the pain that is left over from Laura every day right now.
And now we have Beta out there bringing rain, even right now, to some parts of your area, and forecast to bring more rain to southwestern Louisiana. How concerned are you with that, and what impact is that going to have on not only the recovery efforts, but also just the mindset of still dealing with yet something else tropical coming your way?
We're very concerned, and we're trying to get the message across to locals that we've got to remain vigilant. If 2020 has taught us anything, it is that expect the unexpected. And the idea that we would get hit by another event is not unimaginable at this point, unfortunately, as much as it pains me to say that. So we're very concerned about water from this event, Tropical Storm Beta, but really anything, any water or surge or winds that are related to tropical storm is the last thing we need right now in Lake Charles. So it's very concerning.
And most Americans stress out if their phone doesn't work for 5 minutes, let alone, knocking out power, not having running water for an hour or so. But we're talking more than 3 weeks of not having power and for many not having clean water to drink. What type of stress factor is that as we still now moving into almost week 4 without having these basic necessities?
Well, I'll tell you, we've made some strides. The majority of the city does have running water right now, though there is a boil advisory. A majority of our parish does have electricity returned to it from Entergy, but still, to those individuals that don't have power, that's not a very comforting feeling. And so there's a mental health aspect of this that was already tough because of COVID-19, that was already tough because of Laura, and now it's even tougher because people are looking at Tropical Storm Beta. So it does weigh heavily on our population, but we are a resilient people, and if there was any community that could get through 2020, I promise you it's Lake Charles.
All right, Mayor Hunter, maybe you can give some advice to other residents, say in Florida Panhandle or coastal Alabama, or maybe even people who could be going through a Beta pretty soon here. What advice would it be, and having hindsight of what you're still going through with Laura?
Well, it's not only Laura, but I'm going to recall back to Hurricane Harvey. And when Harvey actually hit southwest Louisiana, I don't even believe it was a hurricane anymore. But it was such a slow-moving storm, and the rain was so intense that we did have flooding here in southwest Louisiana. So my message is to leaders, it's to the population along the Gulf Coast. You can really never let your guard down, especially during hurricane season. And that doesn't mean you have to live every day scared to walk out the front door, but it does mean you have to be vigilant. You have to pay attention to the news. And you have to realize that just because something is not called a hurricane doesn't mean it can't have some severe effects on you and your community.
Great advice. Thank you so much for your time as Mayor Nick Hunter of Lake Charles, Louisiana. And know that we at the Weather Channel are still thinking about you guys, and we have not forgotten about the people there in southwestern Louisiana. And now we're definitely watching the weather impacts currently with Beta. And heads up, New Orleans, you got some more heavy rain coming your way. And this is, yes, a tie to Beta. You'll see a lot more rain with Beta than you did with Sally last week for sure. And also that rain moving into the Houston area as well. And look at the winds here. We're already dealing with some winds gusting in the close to 30 miles per hour on Lake Charles. You too will have some rain showers coming that way. Again, more rain continues here in Texas. Some of the forecasts potentially, yeah, maybe 5 to 10 inches through this event. Welcome back to Weekend Recharge. We're still watching, yes, the water rise here. New video in Galveston, Texas. Even the Bayside dealing with some flooding. That's mainly because we're seeing that kind of north wind. So we're seeing Bayside flooding, Galveston Bay Soundside flooding, and we're still seeing a water rise on the Gulf as well. So definitely areas we're watching for more rain because we are not quite even beginning with some of the impacts now. With Hurricane Beta, something we will definitely watch as Beta continues to make its approach to the Texas coast. That landfall probably being sometime late tomorrow night into early Tuesday morning. Hopefully it's quicker and moves faster, but right now it's not moving fast at all. But we are seeing rain already moving into the Houston metro area. That rain threat, that flood threat is something that will be sky high across the area. In fact, looking at the radar, seeing rain has been falling now in Galveston, pushing up towards League City and Dickinson, even Lamarck, and now even the south side of Houston. Hobby seeing some rain showers in the area. We're also watching some rain pushing on towards even Lake Charles, scattered light rain there, but also rain into areas of Louisiana. So welcome back to Weekend Recharge. We're still watching all the forecasts intently with Beta. Let's bring in our hurricane specialist, Dr. Greg Postel, to talk about where and when and what we're going to see out of Tropical Storm Beta.
I think Beta is going to make landfall tomorrow during the late afternoon hours, if not earlier, depending on which model you choose. But it is going to bring the impacts, as it is already, between now and then. You can see heavy rain just now moving onshore to parts of coastal Louisiana, as it was doing so yesterday. Winds in New Orleans gusting to almost 30 miles per hour. Even some rain showers now moving through Galveston and nearby areas in Houston, where we're seeing some gusty winds over 30 miles per hour. So there's the center of circulation, and a lot of the bad weather is located on the north side of it, whether it's the northeastern quadrant or the northwestern quadrant. You get the sense that there's not a lot of bad weather right near where the center is of the lowest pressure for now. This is what we've got in southern Louisiana. You can see some of those rain showers moving north, even into coastal Mississippi. We're seeing some rain showers move through Biloxi and Slidell, Louisiana as well. And farther to the west, how about this little rain band, this outer band of Tropical Storm Beta swooping through parts of Texas, including Houston, League City, and Galveston. Wind gusts of 33 knots was reported at Galveston, with a heavier rain shower moving in. That's about 36 miles per hour or so, 37. And that will be kind of the way we'll see today go, with clearing skies from time to time and the weather being actually pretty nice for a lot of this afternoon. But it'll get worse tomorrow, with a lot of the bad weather here moving on the northwestern edge now of Tropical Storm Beta. So keep in mind, that will likely lead the sort of movement or onshore or landfall of Beta. So if you think of the landfall of Beta as being tomorrow afternoon, a lot of that bad weather that's out ahead of it will move onshore likely tonight, with gusty winds all along the way. Jennifer.
Well, along the coast of Texas, they are bracing for the impacts from this tropical storm, possibly a track to hit the region by early Tuesday, so it's going to take a while. Let's get right to the coast and go to meteorologist Mike Seidel. Good morning, Mike. And again, wow, we can really see those waves behind you really churning and looking pretty rough there.
Yes, we've got the wave action here. Now, keep in mind, J-Lo, this is Matagorda Bay. The Gulf is out that way. so we have protection from the barrier islands, but it's a lot choppier. It's like a giant wash tub versus yesterday afternoon. Now, we had high tide this morning, next low tide coming up in about 2 to 3 hours. You can see the high tide level. By the way, the rise was about 2.5 feet above normally dry ground. The surge, right now, we're about 2 feet higher than average. Our forecast surge here is 2 to 4 feet, south of here 1 to 3 feet. The other impact will be the rain. And rainfall totals are really going to be strongly dependent on where the center comes in because it's so lopsided. If you're south and west of where the center comes in sometime tomorrow, you're going to get a lot less rainfall. North and east of the center, you'll get more rainfall. Right now, we're expecting about 1 inch or 2 here. We do have the flash flood watch from Port Aransas north. That does not include Corpus Christi, and that goes from this evening into Tuesday. The other thing is this morning at high tide, you can see what happens when the water comes up just 2.5 feet. Look at that water over the docks and over the roadways. This is at the marina. Shot this about 2 hours ago. So there is some impact, and just about everybody yesterday got their boats out of the water ahead of Beta. So it's going to be a slow, agonizing wait to get this on shore. Right now, though, we do not think it's going to become a hurricane. It's going to be more of a surge and rainfall threat. Continuing coverage all day through tonight here on the Weather Channel as Beta makes its approach towards Texas.
At physician.
Well, for many living in the Florida Panhandle, Hurricane Michael is a storm that they won't forget. In 2018, Michael unexpectedly jumped from a Category 2 to a Category 5 in the span of a day. It's the process known as rapid intensification and can often catch people off guard, making these types of storms extremely dangerous. Now, this didn't used to be an common occurrence, but lately we're seeing it happen a little bit more and more. Most recently with Hurricane Laura. Our Dr. Greg Postel is in the lab with a closer look at why rapid intensification is so dangerous and why we're seeing it happen more often.
Yeah, we don't know exactly why it's happening, but it sure seems to be the latest trend with hurricanes in the northern Gulf of Mexico. Let's look at 2020, for example. Now, I've got a bunch of hurricanes on here. Not all of them made landfall in the United States, and therefore not all of them in the northern Gulf of Mexico. But these are all the landfalling hurricanes, whether it be Central America, of course. In 2020, every single one of these cases was increasing the intensity all the way up to landfall. Now, you can see Laura on this case here was the green line right there, which was rapidly intensifying right before landfall in southwestern Louisiana. And Sally was on its way as well, strengthening very quickly on final approach. Let's have a look at those hurricanes individually, and you can see what happened. So let's have a look at Sally. Very recently, we saw the pressure drop like a rock in the final 12 hours before making landfall, and then the wind went up about 25 miles per hour in just essentially a 12-hour span. That was on its way to rapidly strengthening to way beyond that. And we don't have to go before that, much before that, to see that it happened again with Laura. Look at this. Look at the pressure drop in Laura in the final day. And the wind speed increase about almost 50 miles per hour. Another case of rapid intensification in the northern Gulf of Mexico, the kind that was rare a long time ago. In fact, there's scientific literature that suggests it was more common than not. A common pattern of behavior was for these systems at this strength to weaken right before they made landfall. Doesn't seem to be the case anymore, at least of late, with this small sample. There we see the pressure in Michael drop like a rock back in October of 2018 in the last 24 hours, and the wind going up again about 50 miles per hour in the last day. And if that weren't enough, how about Harvey, South Texas? Did the same thing. Pressure went down and the wind went up. Now, whether or not there's a signal here in terms of the climate change, we don't know yet, but I have a feeling that relatively soon, science will sort it all out. Paul.
All right, thanks, Dr. Postel. Let's go from the tropics to fall-like weather. Again, even though we are almost still in summer, almost in fall here, but it's feeling like fall. Definitely sunshine, but it's a chilly air. Not even 60 degrees with full sunshine here in the Cuse. Syracuse, good morning to you. I guess afternoon now. We're only going to warm up maybe another 3 or 4 degrees, mid to low 60s for a high, and temperatures dropping back down into the upper 30s tomorrow morning. Look at the temperatures here across much of the eastern half of the nation. Green Bay 66, but only 64 in Atlanta. Yeah, New York City, it's 60 degrees at high noon today. So definitely a taste of fall in the air. It feels so much colder because it's actually below average. We've been 5, 10, 20 degrees above average for so long. Now you drop below average, it feels a lot colder to the system. But more importantly, it's drier. Dew point, humidity is very, very low. So that dry air cools off quicker as well. So it just feels cold once you lose that sun or head into the shadows or the shade as well. Trough has brought down a cold front, which has even made it into northern Florida, driving our dew points in, say, the Atlanta area from low 70s to the upper 40s. That's awfully dry air. And again, that cool, dry air will continue for much of the first half of this week. So look at your morning lows here in Nashville. We haven't been in the 60s in weeks, if not months. We're in the 50s the next several mornings. Our average low is 59. You get close to that on Wednesday. So a gradual warming trend by midweek. Same thing in New York City. Average low is 59. We're in the 40s the next couple of mornings, and warming back to the mid-50s by Wednesday around sunrise. Atlanta, high temperature average is 82. We've been in the low 90s. Now we're in the 70s, low 70s the next several days. It may be warming in the mid-70s by Wednesday. Maybe some of that beta rain Wednesday into Thursday. And record lows are potentially at jeopardy here from the northeast New England. We'll see the 20s and 30s, and all those could threaten to set or tie new record low temperatures as we head into tomorrow morning. Jennifer?
Well, can you believe it? This is the last weekend of summer and fall officially begins on Tuesday. So we want to know, are you happy to see the season go? And we asked this question on our Twitter page. And everybody said, yes, it's about time. Get that warm weather out of here. And then we have about 31% that say, no, I love summer. I want it to last forever. All right, Paul, what do you think? Are you happy? Are you sad to see summer go?
You know, I'm sad to see the long daylight hours go, Jen, because you can, play golf well in the evening. I know your daughter, your husband play as well. Probably feel the same way. I'm not sorry to see the heat and humidity go, but I do miss the long daylight hours.
Your first thought is always golf, isn't it, Paul? All right,
it's the pandemic. It's something you can do safely, you know?
Yeah, you love to play golf. All right, well, stay with us. We'll have much more on Tropical Storm Beta coming up.
I'm Greg. Watching America's most trusted TV news network.
We've got a severe weather threat.
Winds have been gusting the full force of this thing.
The Weather Channel.
Good afternoon. From Port O'Connor, Texas, I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel. Appreciate you tuning in. Another weekend where we're watching yet another tropical system. We ran through the entire alphabet. Now we're in the Greek alphabet, and now we're up to Beta. And Tropical Storm Beta is way off the coast. And the issue is moving so slowly, just moving west-northwest now 3 miles an hour, but expected to pick up some forward motion and get into the coast sometime on Monday. The biggest impacts by far will be rain, the risk of flash flooding, and the surge. Now, this is Matagorda Bay. This is not the Gulf. We've got some protection with the barrier islands, so we're not getting the full force of the wave action from the wind. By the way, it's north, a little east of north, at about 15 to 20 miles an hour. Not incredibly gusty. That will come if we get some rain bands in. And that's going to be the big question. How much rain do we get this far down the coast. In fact, Corpus is not under a flash flood watch. We are here, also Port Aransas, but it's really a function of where the center comes in because it's so lopsided right now unless some of that convection wraps around the center. As you can see, another beautiful day here. Big difference, though, Paul Goodlow. After covering all those hurricanes and tropical storms out here today, it does not feel like Manila. I mean, we've got dew points in the low 60s. There's so much dry air, and that has been the issue with the forecast, one of the issues in making the forecast tougher with Beta.
Yeah, definitely dry air, a little windy, but I'll tell you what, Mike, you know that water still in the 80s. That's plenty warm enough to fuel Beta as well. So that's how we can still have a tropical storm strengthen and maybe even landfall and hold together, even though we got some cooler air around. So there's a lot of things in play. Right now, we're seeing and feeling the impacts, even pushing on towards New Orleans. Yes, you're going to see more rain from Beta than you ever did with Sally here, but we're also seeing some rain where you saw heavy rain with Sally. Talking about Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, Mobile, Dauphin Island, seeing some rain as well. But I also want to kind of back this up and kind of show you what's going on in the Houston area. Yes, this is the beginning of our Beta experience here. So this is one of the biggest concerns. It's going to